I have for you today examples of native speaker speech that I want you to pay attention to and start applying to your own speech to help you sound more natural the next time that you talk. So here is our first clip. Pay attention to this, see what you can notice.
Good fly swatter.
Play it one more time.
Good fly swatter.
So this is a case of what we have a compound noun. A compound noun is when you have two words that join together to make a single thing. We can see this in the word fly swatter.
Good fly swatter.
So what you can notice there is that it says fly swatter. It's fly swatter. So you start high in pitch, fly, and then everything else goes down in pitch. What you don't want to say is fly swatter, because now I'm putting the stress on swatter, but we want it to stay on fly.
Good fly swatter.
Now, there's a little bit more to this too, because we have that word good that comes before it. So when you're describing a compound noun, and some more examples of compound nouns are like textbook or cell phone or newspaper, you want to make sure the stress is on that first syllable, right? But when you have an adjective that comes before it, like good,
Good fly swatter.
you want to make sure that the good or whatever adjective you're using is at a lower pitch. So like good fly swatter, good fly swatter.
Good fly swatter.
And that's what you're hearing there in terms of the pitches that he's using. So this is your first strategy. If you're describing a compound noun, so like for instance, you buy a new cell phone, you have an old textbook. All right, let's take a look at our second tip that native speakers are using in their speech.
And I'm cooling down. I even washed off my cycling jersey.
So I chose this clip because it's actually breaking a number of rules, quote unquote, or guidelines that you're going to hear a lot for American
And I'm
English.
cooling down. I even washed off my cycling jersey.
So the first thing is that, so he has the phrase washed off, washed off. But this is a phrasal verb. But typically with a phrasal verb, what happens is you stress the particle, you stress the preposition. So usually you hear washed off, washed off.
And I'm cooling down. I even washed off my cycling jersey.
But in this case, what happens is the stress actually falls on washed. So this is just to kind of let you know that, yeah, phrasal verbs usually are stressing the particle or the preposition, but there are always exceptions. It's not something that is going to happen 100% of the time. We also see this with the noun afterwards.
And I'm cooling down. I even washed off my cycling jersey.
So cycling jersey, again, you would normally expect that to be a compound noun as well, because it's a specific thing, cycling jersey. But in this case, we might actually get more of the stress on
And
cycling.
I'm cooling down. I even washed off my cycling jersey.
Sorry, I meant to say more of the stress on jersey. So again, even with compound nouns, where you would expect the stress to fall in the first syllable, it doesn't always work out that way. So it's just to build that awareness that, as always in American English, there are exceptions. It's not always going to happen the way you would expect it to. So just kind of be mindful of that as you talk and as you listen to native speakers. Let's take a look at our third piece of advice that you can start applying to your own speech, sound more natural in American English.
As soon as you go inside, shut the door.
We get a very heavy reduction here. Maybe you heard it.
As soon as you go inside, shut the door.
You can hear with this soon as you. If you're expecting us to say soon as you're going to be very disappointed.
As soon as you go inside, shut the door.
Soon as you. So again, something that we see with the word as is just one of those words that's just not stressed very often. It typically gets reduced. It gets reduced very often to just kind of like that z, that z, or sometimes when it links with that y sound makes that j, just like soon as you.
As soon as you go inside, shut the door.
Guess that's just something else to be aware of. You see this also when you have like comparisons, like big as the house or like tall as a tree, things like that. We're just going to see that as often gets reduced and becomes very weak. Let's take a look at our fourth tip for you to sound more natural in American
You could
English.
take the jacket off, but
So something that we see with auxiliary verbs or modal verbs, especially modal verbs where it's like could, should, would, when they're followed by a base verb, this is something that
you
happens a
could
lot.
take the jacket off, but
We don't typically stress the modal verb, so it's not like could take the jacket off. Very often what happens in a normal situation, relatively neutral context, the stress falls on whatever the base verb is. So instead of could take the jacket off, could take the jacket off, or could take the jacket off, like things like that. It could, though, is not usually going to be the word that receives the
you could
stress.
take the jacket off, but
It's always possible that there are exceptions to this too, but in general, again, when you have these sorts of modal verbs, could, would, should, they will not receive the heavy emphasis. It's usually going to go on the verb that comes after it, the base verb, or the noun. I have one last tip that I want to introduce to you guys, but before we do, I just want to mention that we have so many tools available to you. So that way we can look at your pronunciation instead of just looking at native speakers because it's helpful to know the places where you're having your strengths, but also the places where maybe we have our weaknesses or things we want to improve. And we have all different kinds of levels. We have YouTube videos, which are available for free. We also have a group on Telegram where for $5 you get access for the month. And every single day you get feedback from me. I give you a couple words to say, a couple sentences. You send me audio, I give you feedback. We also have a Mission English program. Actually, a nice update for Mission English too. So, Mission English is our private Facebook group where we do live streams 2 times a day for 30 minutes. So, for instance, today was Wednesday. We did a 9:30 a.m. stream. We did an 8 o'clock stream in the evening. We do those streams more. We do a 9:30 a.m. stream on Tuesday. We do it again on Friday. We have an 8 p.m. stream on Wednesday. We have it on Thursday, and we have it on Monday. So, lots of options here. But in addition to that, we are starting writing classes. This is going to be during the weekends. So Saturdays and Sundays is going to be starting in April. So if you're trying to get some writing practice in, get some feedback for IELTS, TOEFL, whatever your situation is, that's also in our Mission English program. You can find more details at fluentamerican.com. You can look at the ticker below as well. See if you can notice what's going on here.
Bushwhack up the mountain.
Mountain tends to be a hard word to say because it has a held T sound before the end. So it's not usually pronounced as mountain. It's usually pronounced as mountain, mountain.
Bushwhack up the mountain.
Some tips here, trying to make sure that that final N sound has a very low pitch with lots of breath. It's like mountain, mountain. It's almost just like saying an N sound very quickly and very lightly with, again, a very low pitch. You also don't want to stop the breath. It is a held T, but you don't want to hold it too long. So it's not mountain, mountain, because you're really blocking the breath there. Try to keep the breath flowing, but don't pronounce the T. Mountain, mountain.
Bushwhack up the mountain.
Just reviewed Familiar Strangers and met the producer.
So the word of familiar, you can see that L sound right in the middle. But one thing you will not have heard him say is familiar.
Just reviewed Familiar Strangers and met the producer.
Notice that the way he says is more familiar, familiar. So he is using what is called a dark L. So very often when you have an L sound that is either in the middle of a word or at the end of a word, it becomes what's known as a dark L, where the tip of your tongue actually goes down and the back of your tongue slightly rises. This makes the L almost more into a vowel sound. So instead of familiar, it becomes familiar.
Just reviewed Familiar Strangers and met the producer.
Allows you to have so much more air passing through. So again, it's like familiar, familiar. That's a word that I would encourage you to practice a little bit. Guys, that's our very first tip. You can let me know in the chat. Are you using dark L's in your speech? Or do you feel like you would have said that word as familiar? Let me know what you guys are doing. We're going to march on to our second tip that you can start using in your own speech to sound more natural in American English.
Documentary, mockumentary.
One of the things here you could hear they said documentary, mockumentary.
Documentary, mockumentary.
Now, is that how you would have said those words, or would you have said documentary, mockumentary? And so, what are they doing differently? Well, they're using what's known as a silent T sound. So, when you have a letter N that is followed by a T, then that T very often goes silent.
Documentary, mockumentary.
Documentary, mockumentary. And what this does is it really lets you allow breath to continue flowing. Because when you say documentary or mockumentary, well, you're really blocking breath and you're getting a choppier, less smooth sound. In American English in general, does not like that one bit. So when you see an NT, make that T go silent. You can see it in words like center or international or dentist. Just a couple other examples there. What do you think about this one here? What am I going to say?
That's probably going to go to Broadway.
You gonna do something in it?
The word probably has so many different ways of saying it. But if you're saying it's probably, well, that's a sign that your consonant sounds are really strong. We want the vowels to be the strong part.
That's probably going to go to Broadway.
You gonna do something in it?
Probably. So a couple things that are happening. Firstly, that R sound is not very strong. Instead, it's that ah sound that's strong.
No way.
That's probably going to go to Broadway.
You're gonna do.
After that, what you want to make sure is those B's that are in the middle are also very weak. So it's not probably, it's probably, proba. Then we're going to finish with a dark L sound at the end, like we saw earlier. Probably.
No way.
That's probably going to go to Broadway.
You're gonna do something in it.
Other ways that you may hear this pronounced too are just probably, it's probably, or even just probably, it's probably. So those are just some other very frequent ways of pronouncing the word probably. Make sure that you're not saying probably because that's a little bit too choppy and not very smooth at all. And again, if you're seeing any themes here, is that American English wants things to flow with your breath and with your linking. That is what we are always about. Yes, as Rosaura notes, watching out for those B's, trying to keep those B's as weak as possible. We're interested in vowels. Let's take a look at our next one here.
Coming in this film, having worked with her 3 times already.
This is something that happens a lot with numbers, like it's 10 degrees or I have $5. What you're going to notice that in general, there's always exceptions, but in general, when you have numbers, you want to put the stress, the emphasis on the noun after the
Coming in
number.
this film, having worked with her 3 times already.
That 3 times, 3 times. If you're not sure what stress is, that means that we're putting that higher pitch in a slightly longer length of time on that second word, times, 3 times.
Coming in this film, having worked with her 3 times already.
So again, 3 times. It's not 3 times. It's 3 times in terms of your stress pattern that you're looking for there. See if you can identify what I'm going to say here.
Doing some sort of comedy.
So this is a very common pattern and also a very common phrase, like some sort of. It's kind of like kinda, or is just that's the meaning. But when you have this
Doing
phrase,
some sort of comedy.
so this sort of pitch pattern is very frequent. Some sort of. No, she's taken 3 steps down. Some sort of, and then whatever comes after that, you want to have at the highest pitch, It's like some sort of comedy.
Doing some sort of comedy.
That's definitely a phrase I would memorize or get used to just because it's such a high frequency group of words. Some other things too you want to pay attention to, some sort of, the pitches go down, but there's also linking, right? That T in sort becomes a fast D sound, sort of, some sort of, and then comedy or whatever your noun is. Take a listen to what you hear.
I'm a pipeline fighter, and when pipelines
One of the things here that she's doing is she ends a sentence and then she starts a new one. It's like, I'm a pipeline fighter. So you can hear that what she's doing is that the pitch keeps going down. Fighter.
I'm a pipeline fighter, and when pipelines
Pipeline fighter. I'm a pipeline fighter. I'm a pipeline. So what's happening is that even though that first sentence finishes, the pitch is going to continue going down until the next stress. And what this does is it helps you join sentences together in a way that sounds more natural.
I'm a pipeline fighter, and when pipelines
I'm a pipeline fighter. I'm a pipeline. Instead of saying something like, I'm a pipeline fighter, you just, again, you can hear that disconnect between the two sentences. So this just helps to join things together in a way that sounds more natural. Run sentences together. Just because you see a period doesn't mean that the two sentences have to feel so detached. So that's our very first technique. Let's take a look at our second one.
women go missing at alarming rates.
There are times when you're speaking in English and you want to add extra emphasis to something. She's saying women go missing at alarming rates. Normally in English, what you would expect is just one stress. You would expect it if you have an adjective and a noun, you expect it on the noun, like women go missing at alarming rates, alarming rates. But what she's doing is to add urgency, is she's adding an extra
Women
stress.
go missing at alarming rates.
Alarming rates. So what she's doing is she uses a higher pitch on alarming with a heavy falling intonation, rates. Then, or she does that on alarming, and then she does that same thing on rates, alarming rates.
Women go missing at alarming rates.
That repetition of the heavy falling intonation, but the higher pitch on both of those words is adding extra stress. So if you're describing something like it's like really cold or like beautiful day, these are just some examples of how you can add extra stress to what you're saying to make things sound a little bit more emphatic. Guys, if you're already getting some value from everything we're saying, be sure to let me know. You can do that by liking the stream. If you know other people that are studying American English, let them know what we're doing too. Share this with them. We're going to keep trucking. How about our third situation here?
Have our food. Have our water.
Speaking of stress, what you're seeing here is that she has almost every single one of these words receiving emphasis.
Have our food. Have our water.
Instead of just saying, have our food, have our water, she's saying, have our food, have our water. So this is kind of doing the same thing that we mentioned previously with that heavy falling intonation and that higher pitch on each of those words. Have our food, have our water. And this is something that's used a lot of times if you're trying to really add emphasis to every single word you're saying. Like, for instance, you're talking to someone and you need them to do something. Like you could say, you need to do this. But if you want to add even extra emphasis because it's very urgent, you need to do this. Like something like that just makes it sound a lot more emphatic, adds a lot more emotion to what you're saying.
Have our food. Have our water.
She's at a protest in this situation, so it's important for her and the people that she's talking to convey extra emotion and emphasis in her words. So this is one situation where having each single word act very independently. It's not really linked to the word that comes after it. This is a strategy you can use again to just make what you're delivering sound more urgent. I do have a couple more clips I want to go over with you, but one of the things that if you're finding this helpful, we do analysis like this and different pronunciation exercises in a group that we call Mission English. Mission English is a private Facebook group where we live stream twice a day, Monday through Friday, and we spread it across different time zones. So I would love to work with you individually or in our group setting. So basically, it meets for a half hour at these different times. And again, they're spread out across different time zones. So for instance, if that 1:30 p.m. New York time works well for you, well, we meet for a half hour on Monday, we meet again on Tuesday, and we meet again on Friday. Or maybe the 8 p.m. works for you. Well, we do that on Monday, we do that on Wednesday, and we do that on Thursday. I just finished our class here. So this is part of our Mission English program. All of the classes that we have, our group classes, they're saved in the group. It's again in a private Facebook group. You can join me on screen. We do exercises together. We listen to native speakers together. We listen to each other and we give some suggestions and tips every single day of the week. All the classes are saved in the private Facebook group too. So you can already see all previous lessons. There's already 100, for 200 soon lessons in the group. So we'd love to see you there. You can visit fluentamerican.com for more info on that. Take a look at this
I
one.
currently live in the Hoking.
One of the strategies that American English uses in terms of pitch, if you're not sure what pitch is, think like this and then this. Like that first one is a really high pitch. The second one's a really low pitch. English in general is doing a direction down. Every syllable is going down. You can hear what I said. Every syllable is going down. And this changes when you have a stressed word. When you have a stressed word, the pitch wants to go up. So if we don't have a stressed word or a stressed syllable, then the pitch pattern just is going to continue to go down. You can hear this
I
here.
currently live in the Hoking.
I currently live in Lenape-Hoking. I currently live in Lenape-Hoking.
I currently live in the Hoking.
So you can hear that ho is the word where it starts to raise in pitch. Everything else is going down. I currently live in Lenape-Hoking, and this is the strategy that you generally want in between stressed words. Don't just say everything at the same pitch because people cannot understand you. Don't say everything at the same pitch. People cannot understand you. Do you hear the difference there? In that second time, I went down and then I reached my stressed word and then I went down again. So this is another strategy you can apply to your own speech. Quick strategy I want to show you guys that native speakers are using and that you can start using in your own speech too to sound more natural American English.
It doesn't just affect our water. It doesn't just affect our air. It doesn't just affect our food. It doesn't just affect our bodies.
She is saying the same sentence pattern over and over and over again. That's a great rhetorical device. But what you want to do when you're having this situation in English is you want to change something about each of them. What she's doing is she's changing the pitch. Listen to how she says words like food, air, water.
It doesn't just affect our water, it doesn't just affect our air, it doesn't just affect our food, it doesn't just affect our bodies.
She's like water, then she's like air, then she's like food, then the bodies. It's like each one of those words is at a different pitch. So this is what you need to do in lists or times where you're repeating the same words or patterns over and over again. Makes these subtle changes and it can have a very big impact on your speech. See if you can identify what we're going to talk about.
14% of reviews mentioned protective effects of drinking soda.
The things that's interesting here is that you can hear that rising intonation at the end. But this is a sentence, or is it? Well, it starts off like a sentence. You're going to see subject and verb. There's not really anything that would suggest grammatically that this is a sentence, but we get that rising intonation at the end. What this does is it indicates to your listener that you're making a statement and turning it into surprise or shock or something is unexpected. And that is why we're getting that rising intonation at the end.
14% of reviews mentioned protective effects of drinking soda.
Drinking soda. So that means that this surprises the speaker or surprises you. For instance, you can say it costs $14. And then someone else could be like, what? It costs $14? And that is, again, you can take any sort of statement, use that rising intonation, and change it into an expression of surprise or disbelief, or even to let your listener know that, oh, can you repeat that information so that way I can make sure that what you said was correct.
Tea over coffee.
Let's play that one more time.
Tea over coffee.
This is a case of contrastive stress where we have two different nouns. They appear at opposite ends. One's usually at the beginning, one's at the end. But notice that the intonation and the pitch changes do occur.
Tea over coffee.
So tea, often typically your first word is going to have that rising intonation, tea, and then your last word typically is going to have your falling intonation and often at a lower pitch.
Tea over coffee.
Tea over coffee. Situations like this. You can have this or this, here or there. Situations like that. So again, this sort of pitch pattern, pronunciation pattern is another very common feature that you're going to see in American English pronunciation. As we're going through these tips, guys, let me know if you're finding this helpful. What are we going to be discussing? Take a look here.
They were heavier, right? These wine numbers, right?
Right is it's a tag question. This is something that typically appears at the end of a sentence. What I really want you to pay attention to is how he says the word right at the end. Pay attention to the pitch, pay attention to the volume, pay attention to the speed.
They were heavier, right? These wine numbers, right?
There were actually two clips there where he says, right. And because it's a tag question because it's not really central to your argument you're making, typically what's going to happen is it's going to have a super low pitch and it's also going to be said very fast. Notice again how quiet it is, how fast it is, and how much lower in pitch it is than what comes before
They
it.
were heavier, right? These wine numbers, right?
So by again doing that with tag questions, you want to make sure that those things often, if they're not so important, have a really low pitch, like this, right? Like this, right? Really weak, really low. Let's take a listen to this one here.
14% of reviews.
So something that you may already be aware of, when you have an N that comes before a T, that T very often disappears. We're going to see that this is not just occurring inside of words, though.
14% of reviews.
You can see that now, even though it's percenta, we have two different words, but we still have that NT combination. So that T very often gets completely removed and goes silent.
14% of reviews.
So instead of saying percent of or percent of, it becomes percent of, percent of. This is again something that happens with an N plus a T. You can see it's words like center or international, advantage, and many, many other words in American English pronunciation. See if you can identify it just by hearing
What do
it.
you think is more likely?
So notice that instead of saying, what do you think? That's very choppy, right? How does he say it?
What do you think is more likely?
You think? What do you think? So notice firstly that T in what becomes a held sound. So instead of what becomes what. Do you becomes dear. What do you? What do you? What do you? What do you? What do you think?
What do you think is more likely?
Lots of common reductions there in normal speech. And I just want to highlight a point. Some people think that this is only a feature of informal English or something you only hear like out on the street or in conversations. No, he is giving a presentation. These are things that you can also use in meetings. This is how people talk. These reductions are supernatural in a variety of settings. So instead of saying, what do you think? If you wanted reductions and linking and breath, you can get, what do you think? What do you think?
What do you think is more likely?
See if you can guess what I'm going to tell you to achieve a more natural sound.
Texas.
Play it one more time.
Texas.
One of the things you're going to see there, so this is a state in the United States, Texas, and I know you see that AS at the end, but it actually is going to finish with a short I sound like
Texas.
Texas. So make sure that you're not just using like a schwa sound. So it's not Texas or it's not it's more Texas. We see this at the ends of so many words. So for instance, like action ending on a short I sound, problem ending on a short I sound. It's just a very common ending. A lot of times, even if a dictionary recommends using an sound, you actually want to use that short I, like you see again in Texas.
Texas.
So that's our very first tip. Pay attention to those short I sounds at the ends of words to make a short I. One bonus tip, have the sides of your tongue touch your top teeth. It's like you're biting the side of your tongue for that sound there. How about our second clip, though? Take a listen to this and see if you can guess what I'm going to suggest.
It's really ridiculous.
Play it one more time.
It's really ridiculous.
We have an adjective at the end of our sentence here, ridiculous. And what tends to happen? Adjectives are often not stressed, but if they appear at the end of a thought group or if they appear at the end of a sentence, you want to raise the pitch a little higher, hold the sound a little bit longer, and stress that adjective.
It's really ridiculous.
So she's saying it's really ridiculous. It's really ridiculous. You can hear that sound in the middle. Ridiculous. That's going to be our stress. So again, adjectives at the end of sentences, like I feel really sick, or he looks really good. He looks good out there, something like that. So those are situations where again you would stress the adjective at the end of a thought group or a sentence. Hello, Deshok. Great to see you, miss. And again, if you're watching us live, feel free to say, hey, good to know you're with us. Okay. Hello also to Ezra. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. If you guys have questions as we go through, let me know. And also thanks to Ishmael for the kind words. Ishmael, every time I see that name, I think of Moby Dick, one of my favorite books. You sound like that Khan Academy teacher. I don't know which one. I've never used Khan Academy. I'm familiar with the site, but I've never used it. Is that a good thing or not a good thing? You have to let me know. I'm scared. In the meantime, here's our third tip, things you can do to sound more natural in American English.
My senator is Ted Cruz.
Play that one more time. What am I going to say here?
My senator is Ted Cruz.
You're describing names or your own name. One thing you really want to make sure you're doing, speaking of stress, you want to make sure you are stressing the last name. So, for instance, Ted Cruz, Jeff, or like Jeff Smith, Dwayne Johnson, whatever your name is. So, for instance, other people's names here. Who are people's names we have in the chat? I apologize if I butcher your name, but like Shok Alfega, like so, stressing that Al sound. Ishmael Johnson, stressing Johnson. Ezra S, stressing S. Unknown nothing, stressing nothing. Things like that. So stress whatever the last name is. Go higher in the pitch and hold it. Yep. Good afternoon. Just good afternoon to you, Unknown. Thanks for stopping by. Good to see you in the Say It Native stream. And guys, if you want to help me out really quick, if you're already getting some value from what we're doing, here's how you can help me. Like what you're hearing? Let us know by liking and subscribing. I have 2 more bonus tips for you guys. Sound more natural in American English. Take a listen to our next tip here.
When I lived in LA.
Play it one more time.
when I lived in LA.
So when you have abbreviations are times where things get shortened into letters. We can see this, for instance, Los Angeles becoming LA. You want to make sure that you stress the A. So again, go higher in the pitch, hold it longer, LA. So it's not LA, it's LA. CIA, FBI. These are all situations you want to put emphasis on the last letter. USA for the country, things like that. If you're in Saudi Arabia, KSA, stressing the A there. Okay, so that's one other thing you can do. And also, just a quick note, guys, we are doing a course on pitch. We have 2 spots left for students. If you go to fluentamerican.com, you can see my name. There it is, down there. We were doing a workshop on pitch, and we have 2 spots left if you're interested in that. We also have a program. If you're trying to get some daily practice Monday through Friday, according to this schedule, we have a program called Mission English, where Monday through Friday, we do a 30-minute live stream 2 times a day. And you basically just pay for one price and you get access to all of these things. And we do things very similar to what's happening right now. We listen to native speakers. We try to copy what they're doing. We also do vowel exercises, consonant exercises, stress, pitch, linking, all that sort of stuff. So that sounds like something that you're interested in. You want to improve your American English. You want to start looking at what native speakers are doing. And I strongly encourage you to take a look again at fluentamerican.com. Look at Mission English. We would love to have you in our group. There is no better value out there, seriously, in terms of content, if you're interested in studying pronunciation. I have one last clip for you guys. Let's take a quick look here, see if you can notice what I'm going to tell you.
It's been really difficult to contextualize.
Play that one more time.
It's been really difficult to contextualize.
Contextualize. So the key thing here is you can see that T sound, context, but that's not actually what she's saying. She's not saying context. What is she
It's
saying?
been really difficult to contextualize.
She's actually saying contextualize. Contextualize. So what happens when you have a T that is followed by that U sound or a Y or things like that, that T is instead going to become a ch sound. So instead of saying contextualize, because that's really hard to say, right? Contextualize. Instead, we're going to make that into a ch sound, which becomes contextualize. Contextualize. And you can see this, for instance, in a phrase like what you like what you want, or God, it's hard to think of situations on the spot, or like that's your, like, is that your dog, or things like that. So when you have a T sound followed by that heavy U sound or Y sound, then you want to make sure that that last T becomes a ch. So guys, once more, this has been Say It Native, where we take a look at, again, 5 things that native speakers are doing in American English and that you can immediately start applying to your own speech to achieve a more natural sound. I encourage you to take a look at our whole series.